We learned for the last 2 days, we've been learning this Mamar of the Rebbe, which was said on the last day of Pesach, B'siyata D'Shmaya, with the help of God, in the year 1979. And in it, the Rebbe is explaining the connection between the going out of Egypt and the coming of Mashiach. And in fact, it's one big continuum. The whole purpose and the reason that God took the Jews out of Egypt was to come to its conclusion. The conclusion of going out of Egypt is the future redemption by means of the Mashiach. And the future redemption of the Mashiach will even be bigger miracles. Ereno niflot. Will be bigger miracles than going out of Egypt. And the miracles will be in a much deeper way, in a much more personal way, that all of mankind will come to recognize the Creator that's creating everyone. That's really the purpose of Judaism, as we say in our prayer, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that the Jewish people have the job of understanding what God is and making God one for the whole world. But first of all, they have to understand it themselves. So this is the idea of Shema. Shema is understanding. In other words, when your understanding changes and you realize what really is, then the whole entire situation changes, right? If a person is given a diamond worth $100 million and he doesn't know anything about gems, so he thinks that he's poor and he feels that he's poor and he believes that he's poor. And as soon as you just let him know what the value is, what he's got, then all of a sudden he becomes rich and he becomes powerful just because his mind changed. So the same thing is that we have to go always out of our misconceptions and misunderstandings and false feelings and false assumptions about the world. And that's the idea of going out of Egypt. But it's a very difficult thing. It requires a lot of work, a lot of thought, a lot of sincerity, a lot of positiveness, a lot of fortitude, not to be, to misinterpret what seems to be failures. And by means of that, then we can go out of limitation. So the Rebbe explained, we had a little bit of a Kabbalistic class yesterday, when it means that going out of Egypt, Mitzrayim, doesn't mean just a political move that the Jewish people were once slaves in this country that doesn't exist anymore. And it's just, there's another place, and it happens to be in the same area, and it's called Egypt. But we went out of it a long time ago. No, we're talking about the Jews went out of something. Mitzrayim means limitations, and they exist right now. And we just began to go out. Back then, 3,333 years ago, we began to. But now we're completing we're completing this whole amazing journey of reality. And eventually, as soon as, just like Moses took the Jews out of Egypt, they never suspected there was going to be such a thing, but it happened. Also, Mashiach is going to come and reveal the true oneness of God in everything and everywhere. So it says, but in order to do this, you have to go out of limitations. So there's two aspects of going out of limitations. That is going out of negativity, and the other one is going toward more positive. So both of them have to be there all the time. In order to go out of Egypt, you have to realize that you're in Egypt. You have to realize that it's bad. You can't be, complacent. But what you have to go out of, the changes you have to make, are not in other people. It's not like communism or something. You make a revolution, you knock down the government, and everything is okay. It doesn't work that way. The change has to come from inside of yourself. You have to change your actions, your word, your speech, your thought. That's in the beginning. But then you have to start changing your feelings. Then you have to start changing your comprehension of who you are and what God is. So the Rebbe says, this idea of understanding what you are and what God is This is like the beginning, but on the other hand, this also can be what's called idolatry. And idolatry can take very, very fine forms until finally idolatry means worshiping something other than or in addition to the creator of the universe. So the Rebbe says that in order to do that, you have to be aware that there's a creation and not get a creator and not get caught up in the creation. What is the creation? So the Rebbe says there's this thing called the Kav. We talked about this yesterday. The worlds, the spiritual worlds, which are above us, are much more real than our world is. Our world is called the world of lies, the world of sheker. The whole thing is a big bluff. The whole world. We totally misunderstand everything that's in the world to the point that the world becomes our biggest enemy. And not only the world, but our own nature can be our own enemy. And not only that, our own spiritual nature can be our enemy, and even our own holy nature can be our enemy, because we can become complacent and stay where we are. Says the Rebbe, there's this, in the creation of the world comes from this, an aspect of God, which is called the Kav. Remember, we learned about this yesterday. Or you want to call it God's speech. In any case, God's pure oneness is so infinitely real that we have absolutely no conception of what it was. When it was revealed on Mount Sinai, everybody died, their souls jumped out of their bodies. Well, this is what we want to be revealed all the time, permanently in the world. But in order to do that, we have to go out of any, even spirituality. All the other religions in the world are only aspects of spirituality. That could come out to be idolatry. Because if you worship something other than, but on the other hand, we have to remember that spirituality is more real. In other words, it feels more real than this world. That's why people go after drugs and all sorts of crazy things and get addicted, because this world is not really real. You sense that there's something more real than this world. Sense there's something more real than this world. And so the other religions say, well, because you got to get out of it. It's heaven, you go to heaven. But that's also not real. That's just a creation. It's not really real. The only thing that's really real is the creator. And that's the idea of going out of our limitations, leaving anything in the creation and being aware of the creator. In order to do that, you don't receive anything. You have to give. You have to give, because another thing which is other than the creator is me. But on the other hand, God is creating me. He wants me to be here. So it means that you have to look a whole different perspective of who am I. That everyone will feel I am a creation of God. I am a big miracle. God really wants me to be here. He wants me to be active. He wants me to do. He wants me to say. He wants me to think. But he wants me to think according to what he wants. This is talking about every creation in the world, every human being. Animals don't have any problems. Right? As soon as people start acting the way they're supposed to, the animals will fall in place, like in Noah's Ark, and Daniel in the lion's den. But animals nowadays, they eat people and things like that because people are not the way they're supposed to be. So it says the Rebbe, that's the whole idea of this Kav, the creative force that creates the world. This hides over God. And the whole idea of going out of Egypt means going out of all limitations, even the spiritual limitations of this Kav, of this beam of light, of God's speech. To be aware of the Creator himself. That's something like that was on the splitting of the Yam Suf. It says that everybody, even the most simple person, they pointed and they said, this is God. Okay, so this is what's talking about. When did this all begin? When the Jews left Egypt. When they left Egypt, they started having these amazing experiences that what is real reality. And then God did physical miracles. But the spiritual miracles, the personal miracles, we won't see. That's why the Jews always wanted to go back to Egypt, and why they wanted to they rebelled against Moses, and why they worshiped the golden calf, and why they didn't want to receive the Torah, and they didn't want to go into the land of Israel. They didn't want to follow the Creator, because their feeling of their own self was still dominant, despite all the miracles that they saw. So that's it. Hine, behold, that the fact that in the future, going out of any limitations, v'hagbalot, and restraints from feeling the Creator, will go out of anything that prevents us from feeling the truth. Is regarding to everything. That everything in the future will be totally incomparable legabi how they are now. Now remember, when in this future redemption we're talking about, the world is going to be the same. It'll be the same. There'll be trees and fish and people and money and things. I guess think there'll be money. There'll be riches. It says that there'll be riches like dirt, all the fine things of the world, because everyone will be so incredibly pleased and inspired and motivated by the truth. But the world will still remain the same world. Whether regarding to the world, that's what it says in the prophet Isaiah. It'll be a new heavens and a new earth. Everything will look miraculous. We'll see that every tree, every rock, says the rocks will call out to the God. And also in regarding to the Torah. Nowadays we read the Torah. The Torah is another book in the library, or we believe that by means of the Torah, the world was created. It says that by means of the Torah, God created the world. The Torah is above the world. It says in the future, Torah chadasha. There'll be a new Torah. What does it mean, a new Torah? Just like the heavens and the earth will be new. It doesn't mean that the sun is going to turn green and that the flowers will start dancing. It means the world will be the same world, but we'll just see the godliness in it. It's the same thing with the Torah. There'll be a new Torah. What does it mean, new? The Torah will be the same Torah, the same laws, but we'll see godliness in everything that's there. Then we'll see that the Torah is coming from Hashem. We'll see that the commandments are coming from God. And also the revelation of godliness that'll be in the world. The world will be new, fresh, miraculous. And also we'll see godliness. The revelation of godliness, which will be in the future, it'll be a brand new revelation, like it was on Mount Sinai, but something even newer than that. It'll be revealed without any comparison than the revelation now. So what are we talking about? The future redemption by Mashiach, that we'll just see what things really are. We'll see how precious the Torah really is. We'll see how precious a commandment is, to do a commandment from God. And there'll be revealed godliness. We'll feel. Nowadays, we don't even know what revealed godliness means. What is revealed godliness? But you can see miracles, and there are, for instance, take an example. The Jewish people have existed for 2,000 years. They didn't have a country. They didn't have an army. They didn't have anything. Everybody hated them. They've been kicked out, and they still exist, and they still hold on. It says that's a tremendous miracle. It says 70 wolves around one sheep, and the sheep still exists. That's an amazing miracle. Do we see it's a miracle? Do we see it's godliness? Exactly the opposite. Some people say, listen, we've suffered so long, right? Let's leave Judaism. The call of, did you say something? Someone asked something? No. The call of Giluim, that all the revelations, Achshav, now, they are mechitzoniot atik, from the external aspect of atik. Well, the atik lavon, in the future, the revelation will be what's called from panimiut atik, from the inside of this aspect of atik. Atik is the aspect of God's crown. It's called God's crown. And there's all the miracles and revelations that are now are from one aspect of this called God's crown. But in the future, it's going to be from an inner level, a deeper level. In other words, the whole creation of the world and even the giving of the Torah, God did not reveal his full essence. We learned in the Mamar, we just finished learning, that remember in Parshas Vayikra, that God had to call to Moses especially in order to go into the tabernacle, because there was a revelation that was higher than was on Sinai there. It was a revelation in the cloud that was higher than Sinai. That is what the future redemption will be, mainly by means of our service now in the end of the time of exile. Okay, what's the theme of this Mamar? What did we say? What is the theme? Like the days of going out of Egypt, I will show you miracles. Every day since we went out of Egypt 3,300 whatever years ago, we have to go, and we have been refining the world and ourselves little by little. There's less and less evil in the world now. It's just finer, it's just refined, even though it seems everything is coming up to the surface. Everything that previously was concealed or that was obvious is now, right? That was already fixed up. Everything that was obvious and revealed, all the bad that was all fixed up. Everything that was concealed was not fixed up. Now it's all coming up to the surface. The deepest aspects of selfishness and evil and whatever that's coming up to this, all same thing in ourselves. And so everything has been refined. Now all has to be refined. This is the last little whatever sparks of confusion and things that have to be refined. But those are the deepest, and they're the deepest inside of us. Since that everything in the future will be brand new, and since that our service is what brings these new revelations, therefore also the service that we have to do now, how we serve God, in other words, like it says, with all of our heart, with all of our might, have to be done in a new way, like we're going to see. So what are we supposed to do? Now we're getting to the point. Up to now it's been sort of philosophical. Now the Rebbe is going to tell what's demanded from us. Inyan hu. There is a man abided in the time of the temple. There was revealed godliness. What type of revealed godliness was there? For instance, Asara Nisim, there were 10 miracles. Nasu Lavotenu, it says in Pirkei Avot, chapter 5. 10 miracles were done for our fathers in the Holy Temple. Shenisim Elo, that these miracles, Hayu Nirim, they were visible, Be'ene Basar, in the physical eye. Until Shekam Mehem, that some of them, Hayu Nirim, they could be seen. Gam also, La'ami Oretz. Right, this is the one, all of Israel would pack into Jerusalem on Passover, and no one ever said that it's crowded here. Sarli Amakom, nobody ever said it. Says there was never anybody bit by a scorpion in Jerusalem, right? In the holidays and whatever. Other miracles that you might seem to be, not as spectacular as splitting the Yam Suf, but when you thought about it, you realized there was an open miracle, so that there was the cloud went up from the sacrifices. There was a cloud when the sacrifices were burned, and the cloud always went up straight. Even if there was a big wind, a storm, the cloud was always straight. And the altar was outside. It was in the temple. It was outside. There was no roof over where the altar was, so everybody could see that the Avoda the Kiyam Torah mitzvahs and the service of doing Torah and commandments was al pitam v'dat. It was logical. In the time of the temple, everybody knew that God existed. Everybody remembered that God took us out of Egypt, so everybody did the commandments. Even though that back then there was also the commandment of loving God with all of your heart. all of your soul, and all of your might. And people did it, right? People loved God with all of their heart, all of their soul, all their might. They saw, they felt how precious and amazing and good God is. And He's creating us, and He's creating us for a purpose, creating the whole world. People saw it, but nevertheless, Mikiv and Sharo, since they saw revealed godliness clearly, Gama Mesirut Nefesh, also the self-sacrifice that they had to serve God with all of your mo'odecha. It says, with serving God with all of your being, means you're willing to sacrifice your whole being for God. It says, B'chol nafshecha means you're willing to sacrifice your life for God. You're willing to die for God. B'chol mi'odecha means you're willing to live every instant for God. Right? You're willing to give your life, everything. Some people are willing to give their life, but they're not willing to give their money. It says, I'm willing to die, but to give all my money for God, I mean, God has His own money. What does He need my money for? Maybe my life I can understand, right? You do things that are illogical. God gives me my life, but my money, I need my. Say, there are people like that. That's the nature of people. It says even all of your money, everything that you have, everything that you've got, every moment to be totally self-sacrificing to God. That's what it was in the temple. But he said, but nevertheless, they had a reason to do it. There was revealed godliness. Therefore, it came medida v'hagbala v'tam v'dat. They were willing to be self-sacrificing, and they loved God with all their hearts and all their might, etc. But they did it because they felt God. It wasn't really coming totally from themselves. It was coming because there was God motivated them. He inspired them. There was a holy temple. Similarly, Bizman Galut, in the time of exile, when there wasn't such deep darkness, right? Like when the Jews were in Babylon, and they were allowed to come back to build the holy temple, the second temple. So there was 7 years of exile, but it wasn't that bad. And also, even when they left, they were evicted from Israel in the second destruction. But there were times when there was Jews in Poland, it was really good. There were other times, other periods, when there was the period of the Talmud. And there's sometimes when it was very good for the Jews. Which is not the case. So therefore, serving God was not totally from the essence of the depths of the soul. You had a reason to do it. There was a payoff. Which is not the case, but the Mashiach, which is not the case now in the generation of what's called the heels of the Mashiach. That every day there is more and more darkness. And there's a lot of tests, difficulties, trials. Befrad, especially, what type of trials? Says the Rebbe, do not be ashamed because of those people when they scoff at you. Now, this is what we said. Nowadays, the tests, trials, difficulties, hardships, what would we think they are? What we've been through, what the Jews have been through, what Hitler did, what the before that. If you think about it, the destruction of the Second Temple was much worse than what Hitler did, and not to minimize what Hitler did. But right in the Holocaust, there was 1/3 of the Jews were killed, and the rest of the Jews were scattered around the world, and they were not in any sort of danger at all. In fact, they weren't even affected particularly. The Jews in America, the Reformed Jews, they were against accepting the people that escaped, refugees. The famous thing, there's books written about it. Right? They were against receiving. They weren't affected. In the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, every Jew was affected. All of the Jews suffered, all of them. And the temple was destroyed, and they were evicted from their homes and everything that they had. It says that there were rivers of blood. So the Jews had a lot of difficulties in the history of time, right? The Crusades, terrible. What they did to the Jews all over the place. The Catholic Church ruled over everything, right? Except for the few countries where the Muslim countries where there were Jews. Well, how the Jews suffered a much bigger percentage than in the Holocaust. That's test difficulty, says the Rebbe. Yes, it's true, that's test. But still, the fact of the matter is when those tests are over and there's no trials, then did the Jews really care about God? Do they care about God? Yeah, it's sort of, not really. Here you come into Israel, you see there's no particular tests over here, no particular difficulties. We make our own difficulties from our own country, from our own self, our own leaders. But in general, there's not, says the Rebbe, now is the real tests. Now is the real test. What? The tests are, you have an easy way out. Then the alternative to serving God was death. So you knew that the people that were against you, they were your enemies. You're going to join with them. These murderers, I'm going to be like them. No way, I'm not going to do it. But now the people who are against you, they're your friends. They're your peers. Right? Come on. And what is their enemy? What is their weapon? No physical thing. They're not going to, they scoff at you. We have no idea how important peer pressure is to us. Right? There's nowadays, let's just take an example. Nowadays, it's a very common thing about children, youth that commit suicide because of bullying, cyberbullying, bullying in school, right? Their friends don't like them. Their friends make fun of them. You're fat, you're ugly, you're this, you're dumb, you're stupid, right? Sufficient people make fun, they laugh, scoff, and the child doesn't know any way out, and he commits suicide. So important. What do you care what people say? It's such a big deal. Yes, it is. It's very, very important. In fact, it even says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, before he died, he took his pupils, he said, I got my last words for you. My last words. He was one of the most amazing geniuses and Torah leaders of all time. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. His pupils gathered around, yes, master, give us words to hold us on in this one without you, that will serve God. He said, you should fear God like you fear people. You should be afraid of God like you're afraid of people. The pupils thought maybe, he came too late, maybe his mind is gone. And they said, oh, that's all? He said, listen, before a person does a sin, he says, I hope nobody's watching me. In other words, what people say and what people think even about you is so deep and so, I'd say, is such an influence on our being that we don't have any idea how much. That's why when I go on the streets, the Rebbe told everybody on Friday, and put tefillin on people, I am just so amazed when people actually stop, non-religious people, with tattoos and rings in their ears, and they stop and they put on tefillin. Right? And they do it in public. Right? That's one good thing about the Israelis in a way. When they make up their mind, they don't care what anybody thinks. And that's a Jew in general, but the Israelis have a double portion. Says the Rebbe, now we're in a big, big test. What? The test of don't be ashamed of people that laugh at you. Right? What's the reason you're not going to put on tefillin? Maybe my friends will find out. I read a report. I told you about this. It was a while ago. This must have been, 15, 20 years ago, that they made a survey of non-religious Jews in Israel. And they discovered that 75% or something of the non-religious Jews that identify themselves as not religious, that they keep some sort of a commandment, but they don't want their friends to know about it because they're ashamed. They put on tefillin, they keep kosher, some of them keep Shabbat, right? They're ashamed to say it, especially in Israel. Right? In Israel, how do you say, to be religious is not a good thing in Israel, officially. But nevertheless, they do the commandments. But they're ashamed. They're ashamed what people will say. They would do more if it wasn't for, much more so, also people that are simple and empty, and they laugh, they scoff at me, and I'm worried about them. I'm worried about what they say. This is very, very difficult to bear. Just think about this. From all of the, I'm not going to say that. And just consider from all of the tests and all the difficulties that we've been through, this is, the Rebbe brings out that this is the most difficult test, because this is deep inside of a person's soul, perhaps the most deep motivation, or if you want prevention from doing good. What people will say about me. Behold, that the fact that we can stand these tests, hu avoda, the Mesirut Nefesh, this means that you're self-sacrificing. What are you saying? I don't care what people say. I'm going to do what God wants. It's above any limitation. That's what is the service in the generation of the heels of the Mashiach. And we're talking about not being embarrassed to do a good thing, to do what it says in the Torah. And in this generation itself, and we're at the last, right at the end of this terrible exile. This is deeper and in a way higher, more refined. The connection we have to God, the decisions that we have to make are higher than ever before. Incomparable. Until now, it's in a way even a new service of God. Like the Rebbe has this thing of going out and doing mitzvah, putting tefillin on people. I'll tell you an interesting story. Once I was on a plane and I was flying to America. I used to fly fairly often. Anyway, so I went around and asked people to put on tefillin, and some people did. There were these religious boys with payas, and they were all dressed in black and ultra orthodox Yerushalmi. So they were really followers of the Rebbe of Spinker. The Rebbe of Spinker, I knew him, embraced it. He did amazing things in World War II. He and a friend, they would dress up like regular people. They would go into missionary, churches, and take out the kids, Jewish kids. They would go and find Jewish kids, and they would smuggle them out. Incredible self-sacrifice he had. Anyway, it wasn't him, it was his son. And he had these followers around him. So they came over to me. They said, come over here. So I said, what? Sitting not far from the Rebbe was a Jew, a non-religious Jew, maybe an Israeli, had an earring in his ear. He was sleeping. And they said, put the tefillin on him. So I said, well, you can do it too. You could, no. You put the tefillin on him. You do it. I said, listen, I'll stand here. You wake him up and you can do it. No. And they were nice boys. They were really wonderful. Just, such fine, refined, and they had good hearts and they wanted to do it. But nevertheless, they were ashamed. They didn't want what people were going to think about them. Didn't look nice. Maybe they would get rejected. So that's what it means. Now is a new service to see the good in everything. Because the service that we served God in the previous generations, they had some logic to them. They felt godliness. They felt the holy temple. This is a revelation of godliness. They saw big miracles that happened. Even if you look in the stories about the tzaddikim that wrote the Talmud, that wrote the Mishnah, the Talmud, the amazing miracles that they made, some of them. So people knew that there were people that did miracles. But now in our generation, where do we see the miracles? If you look really hard, you can see it, but there's a million reasons not, to do the commandments, or to do them in your house, or to be, ashamed. And to go out, that takes a certain decision, an inner decision. The service of the end of the time of exile. This is a service of Mesirut Nefesh, self-sacrifice, which comes from the inside of your soul. And that's the whole trick. But Chassidut always tries to bring out this idea of Mesirut Nefesh. God creates us, and we have this feeling of egotism. In fact, we have the same feeling that God has, that I exist, nothing else exists, I'm the first, I'm the last. We have this feeling, and God wants us to give this feeling, this certainty that we have, this how do you say, comfort zone that we have, to devote this totally to serving the creator of the universe. That's called Mesirut Nefesh, giving away our will to do something higher than ourselves. And a person could say, oh, I'm not going to give away my will. When I'm a human being, I'm not a zombie. But just think for 1 second. If a person wants to be anything in the world, he has to give away his will. You want to be a good the doctor, you have to go to university and sit in class and put your will into learning. Maybe you'd like better to go out fishing. Maybe you want to be a good musician, you have to practice, right? You have to know your instrument. You have to know the things. You have to give away your will to this thing. That's what you want to do. This is also the same thing. We should want to do it. But the fact is we're still giving away our will to serve the creator of the universe. The Aliyah de Avoda, by means of this service in the Zman HaGalus, in the time of exile, Ubafrat, and especially by means of the service at the end of exile, where we're saying, what is the service now? To know what is right, to learn what is right, and to do what is right, and not to be embarrassed of people. And when you start to do it, you'll be amazed at how those thoughts pop up. But what's this person going to say? What's he going to say? We're talking about knowing what's right first, right? Not making up your own things. Knowing what's right. But when you find out what's right and what God really wants, is that sometimes, let's say to be a nice person, to say hello to people, right? And nobody's going to do that. To be honest, right? To be honest, you find a wallet to give it back. In other words, just that your only concern is thinking about God. By the way, when you do this, and I find from my experience, and then the world changes around you. There's not so much opposition in that one area. Right, in that one area. I used to have to fight tremendous battles with myself to stand up on the plane and put tefillin on people. Now I'm not flying that much, but in the last times, absolutely no problem whatsoever. Just an automatic thing. I just wait for the opportunity to do it. But even for years, I used to, no, I will, I won't. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to go out in the streets and put tefillin on. There was times to do it with other people is not so, but to go alone. Right? So you have to fight a battle. Then when you do it, then there's absolutely no problem. You see that it works and people enjoy it. As he mitzad penimiyat neshama, the service now, in the time of exile, the end of exile comes from the inside of the soul. And that's what the Rebbe says. Every day, yamei tzedcha, every day we're increasing and adding on and making more genuine the going out of Egypt that happened back then 3,300 years ago. Al Yedei Zeh, by means of this, we draw down also God reacts. Very, very basic message of Chassidut, new message. God reacts to what we do. Ad penimiyat atik, in fact, God reacts from his very essence. When we serve God from our essence in a happy way, is that God reacts also in a happy way. By means of this, there will be a chidush kam b'Torah. By means of this, it says the Torah will also be new. What does it mean? Torah will be new. Torah chadasha me'itei tzeitzei. It says in the Midrash that a new Torah will come from me. What's a new Torah? Sheyum shechbo, that will be drawn into the Torah, minotein Torah from God Himself. Ba'ofen chadash. The Torah will remain the same, but the revelation of godliness in the Torah will be in a new way, so that we'll feel as though we were in the Holy of Holies. What was in the Holy of Holies? The tablets. And it was so holy that people couldn't go in. That's how the reading the Torah is going to be in the future. I hope in another second. But we'll be able to accept it. We'll be able not only to accept it, even to utilize it. That will be our life. But Yesh Lomar, we can say Shagam and Yanzeh, that this also Nasa is made by means of the service, this new revelation in the Torah, the godliness which will be in the Torah, and the godliness which will be in the revealed in the world. This will be by means of our service now, in the end of the exile. When the service is in a way of self-sacrifice, then the learning of the Torah will be lishma. Here we're talking about a new revelation in the Torah. Then we'll learn the Torah only thinking about God, not thinking about any revelations we're going to get. That makes us into a real vessel. When we leave our egotism behind, then we can reveal true Judaism. By means of this, there's made a new revelation also in the creation. Because God looked in the Torah and He created the world. When we see the new Torah, what does it mean, the new Torah? The godliness in every word and every commandment. of the Torah, then that makes also a new world. It says the heavens will be new and the earth will be new. So this all depends on our serving God now in a happy way, but in a way that we know what to do is right, and that we do it and don't pay attention to any of the disturbances around us. Even the most, the deepest disturbance is thinking about what people think about me, worrying about what people think about me. Feeling, and this feeling is so, it's like a hum. It's so ubiquitous. What do they say? It's so constant, and it's everywhere. It's so deep, we don't even notice it. But there it is. And that's one of the feelings that prevent us, that keep us stuck in ourselves, thinking about ourselves, me, what they're going to think about me, and they stop us from thinking and feeling the Creator who's creating us. And that service is going to make amazing miracles, bigger than the miracles we left Egypt. That godliness will be available to every single human being in the world, especially, and we'll see godliness in everything in the Torah, in the world, and especially in the Torah. Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will that all of this will be soon, that by means of our service and our work and our deeds now, then we will go soon to accept the face of the Mashiach. Mashiach is already here, but we're not accepting him, right? The Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, is the Mashiach. And to accept the Mashiach, to us then will be fulfilled what it says, like the days of going out of Egypt, I will show you, God says, I will show you big miracles. That's what it says in the prophet Micha. That's the name of this Mamar. I will show you big miracles, and immediately we will be redeemed. All of the Jewish people, and then all of the world. God will bring the third temple from heaven to Jerusalem. It'll be in all the papers. All the Jews will say, wow, Torah, commandments, this is what I've been missing. Everyone will flock to Jerusalem, and the world will be a really wonderful, amazing place. That's when it will be fulfilled. The motto of Judaism, listen, Jews, God is our God. Now he's only our God, but God is one. In the future, he'll be the God of all mankind. Okay, wonderful. That's the end of this mimer. It's like the beginning, just like going out of Egypt, just began our service. So this mimer also begins our service, going out of all limitations, even spiritual ones. Now we will learn a Sicha of the Rebbe. Will continue the Sicha that we were learning before.